welcome to this edition of The Journey. We're here with my regular cohorts. Everybody's present. Welcome. Today we're going to discuss witchcraft. And we're going to start with the origins and dive into it a little bit, and some of the superstitions and misconceptions as well. And we'll probably broach a couple of episodes on this subject. It's quite interesting and a lot to be spoken about. So let's just jump right in and let's do it. Witches! On to you.
Oh, yay.
So tell us a little bit about witchcraft, maybe the history,
I guess what you would call witchcraft, the history started, the name of it started in Europe, actually, like the witch trials, I guess. Mm-hmm. Witchcraft or magic or paganism has been around for thousands of years. But I think they termed the term witchcraft and how it became thought of as evil started in probably like the 1400s, like 1450, like the 1400s. Yeah. So Scotland, I think, was one of the first places where a woman was accused of witchcraft. I think it was bailiff David Seaton's housemaid, and he accused her of witchcraft. And King James of Scotland at the time was, I guess, had some type of relationship with David Seaton. I don't know, I don't remember. But apparently he heard about this, witchcraft, beware, it's evil, yada yada. But that's kind of what started it. And I think he was convinced when he was trying to sail to England. Oh no, I'm sorry. His wife Anne was the Queen of Denmark, who was trying to sail to Scotland to join King James.
There's something about a storm took place.
A storm, she had turned back,
right?
It was terrible, she didn't make it, and, well, no, she didn't make it to Scotland.
Yeah.
So King James then got a boat, so what the hell is this about? I'm just going to go get her. So he tried to sail to England to get her, and he hit a bad storm also. He made it, but I think that's where he found that there was this craze going on.
Well, he's basically started this nonsense that, witches are doing this and
right.
we need
and
to
it's
stop
funny,
it.
too, because he made it take off, the whole idea that witchcraft, the term witchcraft first, and how it was deemed to be, a pact with the devil, which it really isn't. So he really made it take off with that because he actually wrote a book, he became King James of England, and he wrote a book called Demonology. So in that book he included, witches and the devil and all that fun stuff.
And
so
it just took off from there, the hysteria and accusing innocent people. And had no idea what they were actually talking about, but that's pretty much Middle Ages.
I think a lot of the people, the history starts with witches are always deemed as healers, or in Germanic, in Germany, the Germanic term was they used a lot of shamanistic attributes, also a lot of shamanism, and the shamans in the German language at the time were called Wiccans. So a lot of that all ties in, but they were healers and took care of the earth. They grew herbs and
medicine.
Right, exactly. There
magic.
wasn't anything evil or dark about them, but it takes one person to get this thought in their head and start a craze, and everybody follows them, and that's what happens.
It's just not understanding the well, to them it was the unknown.
Right.
It was feared. At the time, I guess it was unknown and feared, and today it's unknown but revered.
Did you just come up with that?
We put that on a t-shirt.
That was good.
I
want a shirt with that. I'll wear that.
Wait, what was that? Say it again. It was revered.
At the time, it was unknown and feared, and today it's unknown and
just watch
and
the
revered.
playback.
I wanted to be up on that. Come on.
We got you, Phil.
That's awesome, bro.
And then, of course, when the craze happened and witches were being put to death all over Europe.
Yeah, so many people tortured and killed from 1450 to 1750. It's a long time.
Yeah.
In the 1600s, it hit Ireland, and oddly enough, it started in Scotland. So you think, and it was bad in Scotland, and Ireland has the least amount of deaths of being put put to death for being a witch because the Irish and their villages, the Catholic Church was very much behind them. So even if somebody wanted to put them to death, the entire village would come to them on their behalf. So I think there was if it was 5, and I don't even think it was that. I have tons of notes at home, but I don't even think it was that because the village itself would come on behalf of whoever was deemed a witch because they went to them for healing and birthing.
Right, they were
and
that community.
exactly,
Yeah.
completely different thing, which is because the Celts in Scotland and Ireland, they're also, they tend to mix, and not when it came to that. I mean, there were a few. And their practices of how to figure out you're a witch, like I was saying earlier, bind their hands and feet and throw them in the water.
Well,
If you floated, you were a witch.
Yeah.
If you sunk, you weren't. Okay, let's think about that for a minute.
And,
Okay?
I do believe, like, as a society, and all these societies are scattered around, through these villages, and some are bigger cities and all. It was the move out of how we were as a people, where we had that leader who was the shaman, the healer, out into a more what's the word? Hierarchy. Saying thank you. I don't speak English much. The hierarchy where we had rulers at that point, and the rulers didn't want to be usurped by these ideas, and that there was something higher than themselves. And I think that's what started the real craze, and once King James got his mind wrapped around it.
I think what also was the nail in the witches' coffins were, we'll use the term witches, loosely right now, but we all know who we're talking about, was that in the 1400s, when, who wrote the Malleus Maleficarum?
Maleficarum.
Maleficarum.
I can't say it.
I can't say it. The Malleus Maleficarum. Look that up, Chris.
But
it was written
I did see
in
that.
the 1400s, and basically it was a book about witches and how witches and demons, and how witches were in cahoots with demons and the devil, and how you had to fear them, and how the church was completely against it. And what made it worse was in that Malleus Maleficarum, in that book, the Pope put an excerpt in the beginning of that book, almost like acknowledgement or something. So because it almost looked like he gave papal recognition to this book.
Yeah.
So
Everybody believed it.
Everybody believed it. Everybody went crazy with this. But really what it was, he was just, well, let's not talk about the church. That's a whole other topic, right?
and to blame somebody to be a witch, sometimes they had afflictions that couldn't be explained by medicine.
You got epilepsy. You were, after that book was written, and he described all the things. He would describe like epilepsy or something, and she's a witch, and these people were tortured.
And the back at the Salem witch trials in America, a lot of it was attributed to possibly the way they baked or the fungus that was in the wheat.
That's what started it with
the hallucinations.
The hallucinations and the seizures.
That were,
I mean, the only one who admitted to being a witch was what is her name? The housekeeper. Yeah. The maid. She's the only one that admitted to being a witch. That took care of the kids. That started the whole craze, and now it's going right out of my head. She was right.
I knew the name as well, and
it'll come to me.
All right. So the Malleus Maleficarum was written in 1486 by German monks, and the monks were Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger.
Yes.
They were Catholics and Protestants, and as they were saying, the entire book outlined how to identify a witch. How to put a witch on trial, how to punish a witch, and it very specifically stated that because of the way that society was at that point in time, it was more likely for a witch to be a woman than a man.
So it was basically How to Spot a Witch for Dummies kind of book.
Yeah, pretty much.
One of the first of its kind, yeah. This is what you look for,
so
this
that's
is what you see.
Actually started the craze, basically, and that it took off in Scotland, I think, to start, and from there it was King James just really just that he solidified it with his
Bad
book,
weather. I'm gonna blame it on
Demonology.
witches. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy though. It's crazy how people, and even today, you still see it. People are kind of the same way. I mean, they run with stuff, and it's hard to bring them back,
Right.
you know. And thank God for the, through the ages, that whole witch craze kind of went away.
Well,
I mean, I mean,
you got to think about that though.
25 years ago, it was still the occult. It was still something,
that
tied to
craze,
Satanism.
A lot of that craze disappeared here in the United States. Now, you talk about a country like Papua New Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
In 2008, 150 people were put to death for being witches.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea about that.
And that's a constant. There is between 50 and 150 people every year in Papua New Guinea who are put to death for being witches.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. I did not. That's crazy.
And you have to think, like, things like this can happen. If you lose your freedom in a country, like, that's it. If the country changes, and like what he's
sounds like what's next for us.
You never know. That's a whole other discussion, too.
That's a story for all.
Let's bring it back over here a little bit.
Let's
That's, don't put that on Facebook. So.
You really have a witch hunt.
Yes. Absolutely. I believe it.
The strange things that you could put on there, though.
Yeah.
I mean, mine says that I identify as a polar bear.
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
This is true.
We are going to do that episode on the masks, right? Next week.
Bring them next time. Definitely.
But even sometimes, even if people aren't in a state of like that extreme fear, people are still. I mean, we experienced it in our old store.
Yeah.
One of our workers, her parents. She was working for us and behind the register, and her parents were like. They were out to get us. They were like, you will not go in that witch store. You will not be associated with them. They are the occults. They are.
That's crazy.
To the point that we found out because the girl was showing us the texts between, I guess she somehow got the text between her mother and her mother's friend. And plotting to vandalize the store.
It was crazy.
Plotting to,
You're speaking.
And who's the crazy people? The pictures of the people against
exactly.
them. For real.
So tell us about like witchcraft itself. Tell us about, things that we might not know as the general public. Things that only would,
Well,
I mean, it's earth-based.
Yeah.
Key thing is honoring the earth.
There's a lot of healing involved.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's the original wise woman, healer, shaman,
Herbalist.
sage, guru. If you were to take this into the context of maybe India, like Hinduism, it's so it's, I think in this, like Europe and like even here, it's just so, like it has to be labeled, and I don't understand that at all. Like, for the sake of to rope it all into one word, witch. Yeah. Witchcraft. But there's a lot involved in it.
Well, it goes against, I think a lot of people's fundamental belief in religion. I'm going to believe in the book written 2,000 years ago by some people that, we don't even know who they were, but say it's from God. Mm-hmm. But when I see something in front of me that's actually tangible, I can't believe that because,
Well, it's the same mindset. Thank the goddess that there's less people like that today.
Yeah.
But it's the same mindset as when the Malleus Maleficarum.
Can we just call the MM?
I'm just going to
We'll just overdub that, don't worry.
It's the same
The
mindset.
Malleus.
There you go.
When that book was written by the monks. When that was written, and all they needed was that papal recognition in that book, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, think about it now. Like, I really do think that if the Pope were to say, witchcraft or there's 20 witches here, they would probably it would be the same thing again.
Yeah.
Like, there's just still people like that today. There, believe it or not,
So,
there are still people like that.
is it a bad time to say, do witches actually cast spells? And are there bad spells as well? Just to follow up.
I can't speak for every other witch.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. We can't speak,
But,
but we could speak for
You know,
ourselves.
just like there are spells,
Mm-hmm.
just like in, but if you were to switch it up and change the belief system, you can call them prayers.
Yeah.
You know, you can call them manifestations. You can call them, you know, your petitions to the gods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever you want to say. But if you're a witch and you're doing the prayer or the petition to the gods, you're casting a spell. So, in essence, yes, witches do.
Okay.
But I think that there's a lot of, like, we can't speak for other witches, but yeah, are there crackpots who call themselves witches? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Are
like
there-
there's crackpot, you know, Christians and crackpot.
I mean, you
Yeah.
have people that put, okay, so take it in the, like a negative spell, if you want to use the word spell, with ill intent. Okay, that's no different than somebody who's not a witch putting out negative intent or negative ill. It's the same thing. It's your intent and the words behind it. It's just like bad gossip. The difference is that where your mindset is, like she said. So if you want to look at it a higher power, people that know better, you know, what we talk about manifestation all the time, right? So manifestation is what you put out, you get back. So if you're putting, you know, negative intent out there,
It's
you're
common.
gonna get that back.
It's common.
So it's a common misconception then to think that when you hear a witch cast a spell on somebody, you assume it's something that's physical and it's going to happen right now, and it's always got a negative connotation to it. Casting a spell, it's always thought of as something negative.
I mean,
and I guess society does that to us with all the cartoons and all the stuff that.
Well, I would just love
puts
to
it
know
out there.
where they came up with that casting of a
point, Joe.
spell on somebody.
Well, that's how I grew up believing. You see a witch casting a spell, you think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Immediately. But that's from us growing up with cartoons and society
Exactly.
and everything.
Exactly.
You know, the way you just put it, if
Yeah.
everyone was taught that from younger, it wouldn't be this craziness.
Well, then that would lead to a whole lot of other truths coming out.
Exactly.
With the Tooth
regarding-
Fairy and Santa Claus and
Well,
everything else.
not just well,
Excuse
What
me,
else?
Santa is real.
and that's
That could be a whole nother podcast. Don't even get me started on that.
Santa
That'll be our
is
Christmas
real,
version.
and Santa is Norse.
But
Thank you.
But to get into all of that, you would have to then. There'd be a lot of bearing of truths as far as like religions, you know, or religions. So.
Yeah, I mean, with
it's
this
easier to
kind of thing,
persecute.
people rather not open their eyes and just be led down the same path that they're comfortable with.
People are content with the lies, and even
Yeah.
if they know they're lies, just knowing that, okay, that makes me
Yeah.
comfortable.
Easier to
Right.
accept.
Right.
Convenient, convenient lies are, hard truth, and that's just the way people are. They're convenient lies. They're
know.
sold. That's just it. If you sell it properly, they're in. That's just the way people are. So, I see broomsticks. I see no black cats, though.
My black cat's home.
Mine went over the Rainbow Bridge.
So now talk about broomsticks for us, because there are a few
maybe
over
talk about
here.
my black cat.
Oh, we can get to that in a minute. One thing at a time.
Well, the broomsticks. They're called besoms, if you want to get traditional. And usually they're used for like cleansing purposes, energetically sweeping the negative energy.
Yeah.
So that's what
Exactly.
they say, sweep the negativity away.
Exactly. That's what they're used for.
I
They're
was
used for
thinking-
protection. You keep your besom, your broomstick by the hearth, or where you come into the home.
Right. Front door.
So usually one of our mentors, Lori Bruno, she would tell us keep your besom up
Best them up.
when you want to bring in good and everything. Besom down when you leave the house for protection.
And there's no like flying on these things, right?
You know, we can't give away all trade secrets.
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay.
Oh.
So talk about the black cat now.
Well, black cat. It's my cat.
Is there something to the cat that, like, cats are, renowned through history?
No, actually, the whole idea of the black cat came from that it was believed that all witches have what's called a familiar.
Yeah.
And it just was. It was usually a cat because most witches were women, elderly women, and like the crazy cat lady.
Yeah.
So it just turned into it was always ends up being the cat, but it could be any animal. It was
Yeah, it really
usually
can.
any type of animal.
Yeah.
Usually domesticated, one a cat or a dog.
Yeah. There was a
And-
raven in Maleficent. Oh.
Yeah. And the cat or the dog was considered an embodiment of the demon that would do the witch's bidding.
Okay.
I have called my cat a demon,
Mm-hmm.
Tis true,
but
you have.
I have.
Well, I mean, sometimes.
What is the cat's name?
Kato.
Okay.
Kato.
You've seen Kato.
I have, yes. I didn't know the name. He hid into the cat door.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
That guy,
Trying to get him on
And it was funny. I knew he was we just knew because he was a stray.
Yeah.
And I just happened to open up the door, and he was sitting outside the door. He was a kitten. He was like that big,
Oh, wow.
looking up at me with these big green eyes. And I opened up the door. He walked in. I was like, oh, well, I guess
There you
you're
go.
my cat now.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that's a Green Hornet reference,
Yes.
Kato? Thought so. So quite interesting. Tell us a little bit more about like modern witchcraft, like things that you guys do. You do ceremonies and stuff like that?
Yeah, we gather every full moon.
Every full moon.
Mm-hmm.
We have our group that we.
Any sacrifices? Nah, it doesn't happen.
Not
Nah.
right
He never
now.
next
No.
time out of his mouth.
When we invite you over next.
Come on, get out of my head. I
Well,
don't understand.
I'm just trying to give clarity to some of our
Look.
viewers that don't know. And I ask some silly questions at times, but most people associate things like that, and let's just clear the air.
No.
Doesn't happen.
Wait, are we talking about sacrifices now or the tiki torches?
He didn't hear me
now
say
I'm
that.
confused.
Either one.
Or
You know
fire.
what's funny about that? What I find hysterical about that is when people joke. Everybody jokes. They go, sacrifices, who's getting sacrificed, right? Everybody says that
all the time.
And I try to hold back and say, I'm sorry, are you Christian? Because wasn't that like a big sacrificing the lamb, or Abraham had to almost sacrifice
Son.
his son?
Yeah.
But hey, it's only the witches that do the
I mean,
sacrifice.
think about it. The offering in church that is supposed to be
The
Christ's
body.
sacrifice.
Yeah.
At the same time, do you then consider it? I can't think of the word.
Sacrilegious?
No.
Hypocrisy.
Seminary?
Nope.
How many syllables?
No. Think about it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you're going into a church and
Yeah.
you're going to take part of this, and you're going to be given this bread and this wine, and you're going to be told that it is the body of Christ and it is the blood of Christ.
cannibalism
Are
the word
you
you're
into
looking-
cannibalism? Yes,
There you
cannibalism.
Oh.
Cole,
Like
brilliant.
seriously.
Well,
We went from communion to
It's
cannibalism.
symbolism. It's symbolism.
No, it's not.
No, it's
literal.
not. It is literal.
It is
It's
very
supposed to be
literal.
literal.
Yes, it
You're
is.
It is
eating this
literally
bread.
God's
who was
body and
suppo-
God's blood.
They tell you that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
I wanted to
must,
shut up
I
for a
must
second
speak
there
for a
because
second,
Cole
though.
was talking, and I was
I
like,
was-
"Oh my god!"
Sorry. But to answer you, Cole,
I'm not Catholic, by the way.
I am. I went to Roman Catholic school. I was an altar
Raised
boy.
Catholic.
Me too.
Doesn't mean
I was an
Sorry.
altar boy. I performed
Me
the
too.
mass with the priest.
Same.
And it was always symbolism. It was never, nobody ever took it seriously.
No.
Oh, yeah, it's supposed to be.
No,
I
everyone
beg to
takes it
differ.
very
They will tell
seriously,
you that
Joe.
is the actual.
From the inside, nobody ever believed that.
Remember, like you said,
Well,
2,000 years ago, we don't know if that's what they actually did. Did someone
Right.
change the story along the
So,
way and be like,
of
hey, let's
course.
just tell everybody we sacrificed lambs
So
and
I
sound
think,
better?
in defense of what Rice is trying to say, is the Catholic Church is because this supposedly came from the Last Supper,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So it was actually Jesus that was presenting it and saying, "This is my body." This
Yeah.
is my blood. So in essence, he was saying, "This is my essence. This is my spirit." Or
Yeah, this
is
symbolizes
my...
me. Remember me
Right.
when you do this. It was the actual
Right,
term
yeah,
yeah.
that the priest says.
Yeah, do this in
Remember
memory of
me.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it was never taking literal.
I still think it's constant hypocrisy, though.
Oh,
That
no.
they use the word sacrifice, and they use
Yeah.
the word when, in fact, that is exactly what was going on in ancient times with all of these religions.
Well, the Romans were the big ones sacrificing the Christians to the lions and all that. But, Christianity itself was emboldened.
Romans did their fair
Christianity
share with a lot
became
of
about
Nazis.
because
Yeah,
of sacrifice.
They-
And I don't believe it was a man sacrifice, a God sacrificing himself. I believe that Jesus Christ was just I don't even want to say that. I don't want to offend people.
Oh, you're
but he was an
It's too late for that,
outspoken.
Joe.
He was outspoken, and he wanted to kind of buck the system of what was going on, and they put him to death for it. Was he a god? No, absolutely not. I do not believe that.
I think he was like an avatar, just like Gandhi, or just like
Just
Buddha.
somebody a little ahead of the curve with the rest of the population.
Listen,
this
lot
is
of
wrong.
things that he
I'm not
preached-
standing for this no more. And then they put him down.
A lot of things that he preached, about, if you really look at it, like look at the Dead Sea Scrolls now that are found.
No, that's not.
That-
No, none of that is actually Christ himself.
No, but
Judas, they found Judas's. They found Mary's, Mary Magdalene.
Yes, in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yes,
right,
absolutely.
But they talked about his teachings.
Yes.
They talked about the original
Yeah,
Gnosticism.
but here's my deal with that though. If you do study the books of John, Mark, Luke, all of those, you'll notice.
The what?
There was a fourth guy there.
Yeah, excuse me, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Now, if you actually look at the books, they just take John, the Apostle John, and you study his books from the beginning to the end. It's not the same guy writing it, and neither is Tom.
No,
Luke,
well, these
and,
were written hundreds of years after. But you're talking about the books that are in the Bible.
Yes.
No,
Absolutely.
no, not the books the scrolls that were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
The non-Hammadi scrolls.
No, but
That was not in the Bible. Those were
No,
found.
absolutely. The Book of Judas is not in the Bible.
Right.
Of course not. But they found
Right.
it. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what's written-
Mary was a whore. A whore.
Right. Again.
It was
again,
Christ. No, it was Christ's
against
wife.
women. So
Mary
let's-
Magdalene was a whore. But that's how the Catholic Church tried to. He's God. No, he wasn't. He
I
was
think in
probably
essence,
married.
Christianity is women phobic.
He was married to probably Mary Magdalene. He was probably married to her.
Right.
And she
Probably, you don't even know.
she was probably just as equal as he was in their teachings and
Yeah.
and trying to gain
Yeah.
people to come see them.
The Church of Joe Rice, amen.
I was actually part of the Church of the Fonz.
So going back into that a little bit more,
Yeah.
saying that Christianity itself and the church is very anti-woman. You have to think
Oh, yeah.
about it this way. It's all of the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah. Every one of them. Yeah.
But when you expand and you go to any of the occult religions,
It's different.
women are held
Yeah.
Yes,
much
the
higher.
exact
Yeah,
opposite.
absolutely.
Even in going beyond witchcraft and going into Satanism. In Satanism, woman is holy.
Yeah.
I mean, because all of those religions are far older than the Abrahamic religions, and I call them the literalist religions. All these other belief systems, paganism or shamanism, even ancient America, the North America, South America, Peru, Hindi, they are far older than Christianity. So yeah, they have more of a revere for women, a reverence. for
Yes.
women.
And rightfully
That
so.
word,
Women rock.
So now, just because of all that craziness, I was looking and I found some very strange information in our research.
Okay.
All right. So, first off, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, 25,000 children were accused of witchcraft in 2006, thrown out of their homes, and had violent exorcisms performed on them.
Stop.
Fun
Wow.
stuff,
5,000.
Based on
Amazing.
what?
Probably the way they were acting
Probably the way
towards
they
their
were
parents.
Yeah.
If I
No,
had to guess.
probably.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean? They're
it's-
children. They can't.
Yeah.
No, we
It's
will
crazy.
go back and scrutinize this information after the show, but that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And then you've got, I'm not even sure I understand how to pronounce that. Kinshasa. Maybe?
Oh yeah, there was a dude at the local 7-Eleven.
Kinshasa.
April 2008, 14 people were arrested as victims and perpetrators of so-called sorcery. Apparently, people were snatching penises.
And how exactly?
How does one
obtaining them?
snatch one?
You walk around with a
Why
large
do you use
machete.
sorcery to do that?
So apparently, according to the government there, these people were using black magic to steal men's penises. I can't even say it with a straight face.
I'm sorry.
I can't
So
even say it with a straight face.
one day men just woke up and they didn't have one?
Right? Like,
Whoa.
Hold on.
and apparently they
have
were
so
being
many questions.
extorted.
I know.
They were being extorted
Wow.
for cash.
Like
In
it
order to
was,
give it a
it was
cure.
being
If you want to see the,
They were being held for
if you
ransom.
ever want to see the penis again, send a bag of money, leave it by the pole. What the hell is that about?
I'm sorry. How does that even happen? Like, I need to know more about that.
That's
Like,
Right, like did they wake
We'll
up
get
one
to this.
day and go like into
Right.
the police department and go, where
Good
did
job.
it go?
Look into the disappearing penises. So that'll roll us into our very first segment of Dark Oddity. That actually should have been the Dark Oddity segment. for
Seriously,
today.
yep,
that,
I give you
that
that.
was pretty freaking
Stay
odd.
tuned for the case of the missing penises.
So today we figured we'd do a segment called Dark Oddity. Dark Oddity is basically the oddest things we can find in the paranormal realm. And we're gonna roll with it and just figure out what we can talk about and see how it goes. So I was doing some research and I found something pretty odd. There's a guy named Carl Tanzler who back in 1930 met a beautiful Cuban American girl while he was working at a hospital in Key West. Turns out our friend Carl, who went by about 6 different names, by the way,
Here's your first sign.
Count, Count Van Coslin,
George Carl Tanzler von Korsel, Carl Tanzler with a K, Carl Tanzler with a C, Count Carl Tanzler von Kossel.
So his birth
Wow.
You don't
certificate,
count- you don't
his
trust
marriage
someone who can
certificate,
count.
his doctor's licenses, his signatures at these hospitals, and his death certificate all had a different name on it, of some variation of the several names we spoke
That's
about.
somehow impressive.
So, yeah. And we never actually could figure out why he had a job in the hospital because we could not find any medical records to state that he had any degrees in medicine or anything like that. Most likely he was in the engineering field and he worked on the equipment, most likely.
He was a radiology.
Technologist,
Okay.
yeah. So, technician, basically, yeah.
Right.
He turned the machine on for the guy who actually knew how to use it. So, in a nutshell.
Okay.
Folks,
So-
feel free to just phone in if you're a radiologist or a technician and you just want to give your
We'd like to hear
little
your
piece
thoughts
of
on this.
information to Rice here, feel free.
Well, this is back in 1930. I'm not talking about today's people. So,
We're back in the basement again.
turns out, Carl had some type of premonition when he was a young man. And in the premonition, he states that a relative, a deceased relative of his, came to visit, and she was a countess, Van Clausen, or Clausen, whatever, Countess Van Clausen.
Kossel.
Castle.
Kossel. Don't get
Count-
it. Don't get
I'm
it.
like,
Don't
wait,
get
adding some more
confused with my
names.
family.
Sorry. No relation to the Corsons, who are a fine family, by the way. Very upstanding family. So, Carl has this vision where this countess that he's related to, who's deceased, comes to him and tells him about the love of his life that he will one day meet. And she describes her in detail. And Cole has this great vision, writes it down, and keeps it, in the back of his mind. And somewhere a decade or so later, he's working in this hospital in Key West. And this woman walks in. She has tuberculosis, which back then in the 1930 area, it's pretty much a death sentence. So he immediately sees her, falls head over heels for her. She is probably 30, 40 years younger than him. And there's no evidence to even suggest that she reciprocated any of these feelings. He was born in 1875, by the way. She was born in 1920.
Oh.
She was born
okay.
in 1909.
1909. Close enough. He was easily 30 years her elder.
Okay.
Okay.
So he falls head over heels, promises to help cure her of tuberculosis. There's nothing to state that she actually reciprocated any of these feelings, but he goes out of his way to bring equipment from the hospital to her home, falls massively in love with her. She dies anyway. Turns out that some of the concoctions he was making probably were really good for her. You know, back then they were mixing, formaldehyde and, all these type of heavy metals.
Kids smoke that now in their vapes today.
Oh, well, stupidity is, rampant in our society. So she dies. Carl's distraught, approaches the parents of her. I think her name was Elena.
Her name was Elena Milagro de Hoyos.
Yes, she went as Helen as well.
Mm-hmm.
And approached Helen's parents and asked if he could purchase the property to build a mausoleum in the local cemetery. And he built this elaborate above ground mausoleum. They laid her to rest, and Carl would go to the mausoleum every day and sit there and sing songs and just pour his heart out to her. And she's no longer with us.
And if that's where the story ended, it wouldn't be on this show.
Exactly.
Thank you. You saw my picture. I'm like, I don't know what is happening.
I can't help, but I
Okay.
know something's coming,
Thank
and I
you,
know
Cole.
it's going to be bad.
Okay.
So Carl,
I'm just trying to prep myself.
after a
mentally.
couple of years of her being in the
I
mausoleum,
couldn't, I
decides that he's gonna take her out of the mausoleum.
Oh, no.
So Cole brings her home, props her up in the bed, does a little microsurgery to repair any kind of rotting flesh and lack of eyeballs, and decides to keep her there for the next 7 years.
Oh my god!
Oh my God! It's
This is
Norman
a true
Bates.
That's so much
True
longer
story.
than I thought he was going to say.
100%
This
true.
is where Alfred Hitchcock
I just
got
said
the
Norman
idea.
Bates. I just said that.
Come on!
So now, not only does he keep her there
Oh, I
for
can't
7
ignore.
years,
Yeah.
but as Joe
Do you
said,
think they stayed quiet for 7 years?
he replaced her eyes with glass eyes. He
She has a thing about eyes. You can't talk about eyes.
I can't.
He filled her with rags so that she maintained the shape.
Her beautiful physique.
And as her face began to
Right.
decompose or rot, Joe, I was trying to be nice here.
Yeah.
He
Not nice
replaced
about
it with silk dipped in wax
And he also used plaster of Paris, by the
and
way.
plaster of Paris. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And when her hair totally fell out, he put a wig on. Story comes out 30 years later. So the autopsy, when they found her... Should I be really scared? So, turns out that some people got wind of this. I
I'm
don't
sure
know
they
if it
did.
was the
It's
crazy
so
odor coming out of the
I
bedroom.
was going to say downwind of it, actually.
Carl slept next to her for 7 years. So in 1940, when the family started to get wind that something was going on like this, they approached them, they called the authorities, they found the body in there. But unfortunately, at that time, the statute of limitations on desecrating a grave and doing harm to a corpse had expired. So they didn't charge him with anything.
Because apparently there's a statute of limitations
Yeah.
on something like that.
The corpse is in the bed, but we're not going to charge you. So he probably had money, and stuff like that. So, it is what it is, but it's crazy. So the autopsy took place in 1940. They actually propped her up in the local funeral parlor, and like 6,000 people came to see her.
6,800 people.
Yes.
6,800
Yes.
people visited it.
And then they buried her in an unmarked grave so that
He could
Paul
just
cannot
find
find her again.
Word.
Now, 1940, when the autopsy was done, flash forward to like 1972, to one of the doctors that did the autopsy, said there was actually a vaginal tube placed in her.
Oh, you know, I was hoping it wasn't going there.
Is
really?
that the oddity?
The whole story, Cole. The whole story, Cole. From beginning to end
You know,
is the oddity.
Now you know how it feels to get yelled at like that.
When he said
That's how
she
he
was in
treats
the
me.
bed, I'm going, I'm not going there. I'm not going there in my head. I'm not, but apparently he went there.
Ripley's, believe it or not, down in Florida,
that's-
Key West, set up a whole area showing the scene of her in the bed.
They did a reenactment?
They did a reenactment.
Oh, that's
You can actually visit the original tomb.
Wait, so
You
I
can
just
still-
want to say, this is where, and we're talking, we can't figure out why people are still persecuting witches. Really? I've lost faith in the human race.
You can actually visit the actual
didn't persecute
mausoleum.
him.
You can still visit Carl Tanzler's lavatory because it's still there with the bedroom, with the dummy in the bed and him standing next to her to take pictures with.
He's still
You
there.
can actually do that.
Well, it's not.
Carl Tanzler died in 1952, by the way. Yeah.
Yes.
In Pasco County, Florida. So,
Yep.
now several
Some craziness going on.
movies
down in
and
Pasco
novels have been written touching the subject. There's been some shows on it. Some bands have actually wrote songs about this. Nothing mainstream, pop charts or anything like that, but
Go next Monday.
it's actually been
Such a
covered quite
gruesome
on.
act.
We'll call the next song Ode to Elena.
Oh,
And
see?
nobody threw him in the water or poked him with pins or burned him at the stake. Nobody did that.
No.
Nobody
Actually-
did that
actually-
because the statute of limitations
And-
ran out.
He was a man.
Because he said
They
he was
made
doing
him
it
famous.
anyway.
He was a
There
man.
you go.
He
He was
wasn't
a
a
man.
He wasn't a witch because he was a man.
He was a man.
And
Huh?
made him famous.
And there you go.
Because he said he
okay?
was doing it out of love.
Folks, what have we become? Or what are we still?
Yeah, it's
Thank
not
you.
what we've become. We've been in for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Nicely said, Cole.
that's the wrap to that segment of Dark Oddity. I think it was a pretty good one, although the penis snatches of Peru were pretty. That was something we need to discuss on our next subject on the
Wow.
next episode. But
Wow.
yeah,
I just want to know, where do you go from there?
I was just going to say that. Yeah. What's the next thing we're going to bring up?
I don't even know where to go from
Oh
there.
my god.
so we're
That's
gonna
interesting.
bust into our next subject, which Chris is gonna handle.
Which is Dark Odyssey Academia. This is kind of where we teach you something that maybe you didn't know, or maybe you wanted to know but didn't know how to find out about it.
Or we're afraid to ask.
Anyway, so this section of academia is going to be about Aleister Crowley. Does anybody here know about Aleister Crowley?
Only the song.
Yes.
Ozzy Osbourne, dude.
Is this the same thing?
Well, it's really about
As
the
far
real
as I know,
man.
yeah, that's what I
The
mean.
songs, has nothing really to do with too much about him, but
So-
factually.
So Aleister Crowley lived from 1875 to 1947.
Born the same year that
1875, yeah, Tanzler.
weirdo pedophile.
Yeah.
Was,
Pedophile.
pedophile. Well, she was 30 years younger than him.
Hold on a second. They never said at what point, though. She could have been 30.
Oh, she was already in her 20s.
No, she was in her 20s.
Yeah, she was in her
When she
20s.
met him.
She was actually married
I feel
and
it.
divorced already. She could not bear children, so she was kicked away.
Okay.
It's still weird.
Still weird.
Well, Aleister was an English occultist, a ceremonial magician, a poet, painter, a novelist, and a mountaineer.
And a highly educated individual for his time.
Yes.
Yes.
He actually wrote many papers and was considered a prolific writer because of how intelligent he actually was.
Yeah.
He founded the occult religion of Thelema,
Yep.
was actually from a very wealthy Christian family.
Yeah. But they were brewers or something, weren't they? Oh, no.
Did
Like,
who?
as in beer?
Yeah. but I might be confusing my stories at this point. But I think his family were brewers. I believe so. Yeah.
Might have been. I
think
don't
so.
remember. I don't remember reading that.
They were very wealthy.
They were very,
Yeah.
very wealthy, and he had actually joined many different occult groups.
Yeah.
He wrote many books that are still actually out there today. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the main books that he wrote for Thelema was actually the Book of the Law, which is quite an interesting read. I've read it.
And he was such an intelligent man that he would join these occults, and he would just work his way up because he was so intelligent that the average people around him were just basically dumb. So he would join this, I guess you would call cult or part of secret group, yeah. And he would just rise to the top, and then he would change all the views that they had to, sync with his views. And then that's how he created all these like mini little societies that looked up to him.
He studied many religions and many cultures as well, and while he was in Egypt with his wife, he started building an altar in their hotel room and was praying and trying to reach some of the ancients. And Thelema actually came from Aiwas, which is a entity that contacted him and assisted him in writing the books and writing the ideas of Thelema. He was a strange individual. He was a strange individual. He was an avid drug user. He was a very open bisexual, and one of his main points that he was trying to get across to people was that no matter what sexual orientation you are, you should never be upset with yourself. You should always be open with it. Which, again, is quite interesting.
In that time period, especially, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was a very colorful character, that's for sure. I believe he designed his own style of tarot cards. That
I actually have those.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's called the Toff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're pretty popular today. So
They're popular, but they're very difficult to find.
Yeah.
And I don't know anyone who's actually been able to buy a set of them.
Not every dealer, like we had to actually search different dealers that will carry them. Not every, like Llewellyn doesn't touch Aleister Crowley.
Right.
is there a reason?
I'm gonna think because he was outspoken, and people, I guess some of his teachings or beliefs, some people would attribute it as dark.
Yeah.
So that's just my guess.
So what's so special about those set of cards?
He just designed them. It's just
Right.
Well,
it's just
Because it's a custom thing?
No,
Oh.
they just didn't. I guess it was just something about him in general that they didn't want to.
I believe he commissioned a very famous artist to design him in the way he asked the artist to draw them out. Something to that effect.
It's very reminiscent of Salvador Dali, the cards. It's not done by Dali, but it's very reminiscent of Dali. And I only wound up coming across it because a friend was given the deck, and he had no use for it, and he gave it to me. That deck sits on my sits next to my altar.
Nice.
What, you're not going to ask him if he did sacrifices now?
You know why?
I know
he's
he
a
did.
man.
Buzzing.
I know he did. I don't have that.
Listen, those goats in high school.
Yeah.
They don't count.
It's a long time ago.
Little Joey's actually a pet.
Where's Brian? Oh, hi. Good. All right. He's still here. He's still here. But yeah, he was definitely an interesting character. And somebody who was very outspoken in the occult and very revered by many thousands of followers. And, basically they, put a dark label on him, and he's been vilified for being outspoken, being bisexual, being a drug user, and being part of, that's this type of society, witches and whatnot. So he's definitely vilified in most people's minds today that don't know enough about him or what he was actually doing. I don't know a whole lot, and I can't say I do. That would be a lie, but from the little bit I have read, just a guy who wanted to practice, his own style of religion, basically, and live by his own code. Who am I to judge?
Strangely enough.
He didn't kill anybody, did he?
Not that I know of, but strangely enough, the founder of Gardnerian Wicca
I was gonna go there.
actually based a lot of it
Yeah.
off of the Thelema.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Crowley's name was blackballed. He figured he could get away with it. He could get away with that.
Oh, so he just stole the ideas and just put it out as his own?
That's what's
That's what a lot of people do.
Yeah. Nothing's original anymore, huh? Except for Dark Odyssey. We are original, baby. We are the original.
Original.
Yes.
I like that.
The OG.
There you go. You heard it first. The Dark Odyssey, the cult.
Slowly but surely.
Started by that man.
Slowly but surely.
Now we gotta come up with some weird name for you.
Tiki.
No, I don't like Tiki.
What do you want to be, Count Tiki?
Supreme.
Oh, I like that.
Supreme Commander.
What about King Og?
What is that?
From
OG?
OG, from the book of,
OG.
by the fallen angels, Enoch and King Og.
Oh, no, I know nothing
The
about that.
Anunnaki, King Og.
I know the
Oh,
Anunnaki.
that's a whole other podcast.
We'll get to that one day.
Every
Stay
time we
tuned.
said that, we have to write that down.
You got that,
He
Brian?
hasn't stopped typing all night. I love it, baby. Man is thorough.
Yep.
Awesome.
Are you also writing down the times for this? Look at that. Look at that. He's got everything.
He's good.
Well, that was really an interesting show, guys. That was a lot of good talk tonight, and I think we broached a bunch of subjects that we hopefully enlighten people with the knowledge that maybe they didn't have before. I know I've learned a lot tonight, and it was definitely a great fucking show.
Joe's learned a lot, and he didn't actually learn that much because there's so much more on this subject.
And we will get to it. Stay tuned. But thank you for joining us, and check out our sites. We're all across social media: Dark Odyssey, Paranormal, Magic Moon Sisters. Get your witch on. We will see you next time. Thank you, folks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Peace. Bring everything else in life. Why not? You know.